Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. Hi, friends. I hope that you're in good health, at least secure, or both, preferably. I say this a lot. I open many videos this way because our subscribers, our Sangha, is worldwide. We're all over the world. And many of us are in areas that are either in political tension or in very close proximity to violence and the threat of the human indignities of, and it's not just war I'm talking about. There's a lot going on that flies under the radar, as it were, of war. But I would say, certainly personally and as a Buddhist, there is war everywhere. We live in an age of violent war, life-threatening war, but also mental war, a war for our minds. And that, from a Buddhist perspective, should be the most concerning of all. And I think that when Nichiren or Tendai or certainly Shakyamuni spoke of an age of the potential for this enlightening teaching to die off, he was talking about an age of human avarice, greed, and manipulation, and backstabbing, anger, and foolishness, stupidity that would reach a fever pitch to the point where, it's cliche, the survival of the species is at stake. Not the planet. Yes, we need to take care of our nurturing, life-giving, supporting planet. But if humanity disappears, the planet will just go on. We'll just be another pestilence. But is that really the level on which we want to live our lives? No, of course not. So, yeah, it got dark for a moment there, sorry. But it's unavoidable. It's such a din around us, constant noise about saber rattling and they're bad and we're good and you're this and I'm a that and blah, 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 blah. It's so constant that we just butter our toast and eat our toast and go along our day like, well, that's the way it is. Or what's that saying? I can't stand it, but it is what it is. Yeah, brilliant statement, right? The question is, does it have to be what it is? Right? There's always an option. There's always a different mindset, something of an influence toward something more life-affirming, nurturing. Isn't that the way we'd like to find the value in our lives, the dignity, and not dignity, ego dignity, just the pride of accomplishing our greatest potential, humanity, one another, love. I know, love. So why do I guess I'm motivated because the last couple of videos, certainly the last one, we got into this discussion about, and it's a confusing discussion. I admit that right off the bat, and I think there is confusion because of translation bias. And I really, really am conscious of that in these moments when I read treatises from Nichiren or sutras from Shakyamuni, but certainly these quotes that Nichiren is giving us from Shakyamuni, I think can be greatly misunderstood and misused as a one of those tools of war for the mind, yeah? And I think we're going to read a little bit more about it now, but I think, and do yourself a service, if you're just starting out in the middle of a dialogue, a series like this is number 37, I think, really, you should try to watch these things in some kind of order from beginning to middle to end, because I'm constantly, this is a daily conversation I'm having with you, and I can't avoid remembering what I said the day before. So my thoughts build on my previous thoughts, as we do, right? And so if you jump into the conversation here, you might get, you'll have missing information, is what I'm saying. So your idea of what I may be talking about will be skewed because of the limited experience of what I'm talking about without what came before it. So do yourself a favor and try to watch these things in some kind of order, yeah? But once again, and I'll just jump in as we go here, so I get to it. We're still in the opening of the eyes. We're deep into part 2, where Nichiren is identifying Shakyamuni's own words about the greed, anger, and stupidity, not just in general, not just those people over there, but within his own ranks, monks, people who are following the monastic order of his day, right? Monasteries are unnecessary these days. They're antiquated ways of teaching, right? Teach by isolation. We still do it. Our prison system is seriously, it is a monastery system. It's designed to punish. We say it's designed to reform, but it's not. If you look at law, it's about adjudicating law and rules that society has deemed for appropriate behavior, and then we go into the what phase? We go from the legal, courtroom, judicial phase, and then we get dumped into the rehabilitation phase? I don't think so. The punishment phase. It's very religious, if you think about it. You've done bad, now we're going to spank you, right? This is the way the system is designed. So the training is by enforced behavioral modification. Oh, that's rehabilitation. Okay, if you say so. Now, of course, I'm not saying that monasteries are places of punishment, but they are places of isolation to limit exposure and control behavior. That's what a monastery is. And people did it willingly because they wanted to discover for themselves, within themselves, a focused, undistracted, knowing experience, yeah? But that's self-imprisonment, if you will. I'm not saying it didn't have value. I'm saying that today in our culture, the value is questionable. If it's self-motivated isolation for short periods of time, I can see that be beneficial. You could make the argument that meditation is a form of that same thing, right? Don't have a problem with that. But if somebody's locking you in and you can't decide for yourself, then imprisonment, right? It's a matter of volition, isn't it? So, in Shakyamuni's day, the construct of his teaching really required that if you were going to get serious about understanding this stuff, you were going to have to voluntarily put yourself in isolation so that you could understand the very ideas that he was sharing with people. And that isolation forced insights, right? But even in their isolation, there were periods where they walked amongst the people with their arms to be supported in that pursuit. So it was very socially interactive. So please don't make the mistake that I'm saying they put themselves in prison. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the nature of isolation and that the relevance of doing that today, it has to be completely voluntary, and the time span being voluntary and self-motivated. And there is benefit to it always, but as a form of requisite for the practice of Buddhism, it no longer makes sense. And here's why. We have a Butsudan, an altar, and a focal point for that altered mind state, that focused mind state that has been the seeking goal all along, right here in our own possession, in our own space, our living space, or our communities, where we can go and voluntarily isolate our samsaric mind so that we can penetrate the wisdom of our Gohonzon mind, through our Gohonzon mind, the experience of Buddha. Monasteries no longer necessary. We are our own monastery, you and I. And that's been the point since the start that Shakyamuni has been leading us to, right? It's important to understand this because in this dialogue, and what's kind of missing in the translation is that, and we see this with prisoners. So again, the analogy holds. When human beings will tend to create attachments to an isolationist kind of situation as a form of nurturing, like a kind of like a womb, like a mothering, and they'll feel protected by it. And many times, and certainly in Shakyamuni's day, those in that system of isolation, especially with others in a monastery, would feel as though their practice of Buddhism could only be accomplished by that activity. There's a fine line of understanding there, although that fine line describes a chasm whereby people practicing Buddhism falsely equated that activity with being the path to enlightenment and being good at that, being a good soldier, being a good prisoner, being a good isolationist, following every single rule of isolation was itself the accomplishment of enlightenment. Entirely missing that it wasn't the rule following, the isolation itself and all that led to enlightenment. What it led to was the development of a mind that could, in the mind, make that paradigm shift to enlightenment. Not requisite of the rules. The rules are just, right? Do you understand? It's hard to talk about this because we're so samsaric. We like, in a way, rules, guidelines, walls. it makes us feel right, like we're following the program. But then you lose sight of why the program exists in the first place. It isn't to exalt the program. It's to get somewhere else. And so Shakyamuni is identifying this problem, that there will be, and there are, monks, leaders, teachers who have become so adept, right? Like the Shravakas and the Pratyeka Buddhas, so well-versed in all of the sermons, all of the sutras, that they've become scholars of great note. That is what they mistake as enlightenment. They don't understand that all of that is well and good, but all of that is only in place in service to an insight that doesn't require any of that. All of that structure and learning and study, like you and I are doing right now, it isn't about the study. It's about dislodging ourselves from the very topics of this study to develop a mind of awareness, not of the study, of the engine of life. Not being able to be a great scholar describing all the methods by which we develop our understanding, but the understanding itself, that's something else. That experience, that total experience of the engine of life, it doesn't have any of those prerequisites or boundaries. Those prerequisites and boundaries are actually the fodder that we need to escape. But, this is the problem with academics, right? All too often, the academic becomes academic. It's like I used to say, people would ask me in different industries that I've been in how I came to know certain things, because so and so, he has, this many degrees, and blah, 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 and how do you know what he doesn't or she doesn't even? It's not a question of what facts I've learned. You got to understand that all those great textbooks that come to you in school that you study from, somebody had to figure that out to write the book. You see, these things were insights of people working hard to find insights that we very down the line, tertiary, whatever, are reading about. It's not like just because we're discovering it in the book doesn't mean it's new. We're learning how to think in a way that might lead us to then develop our own thinking so that we can have insights, not so that we can express well what is in the book, right? You wouldn't think that in math class or in literature class, or right? At some point, all of your book learning and your exercises should lead to you going beyond all of that book learning, because that's just kind of the thing that when your daddy pushes the back of your seat on your bicycle and you learn how to ride the bicycle, he gives you the inertia. He gives you some momentum so that you can then carry on, creating your own momentum. That's how all learning occurs from one another, yeah? But with all of the teachings and sermons of Shakyamuni, many, many practitioners, students who then would excel and become teachers, would become teachers of the inertial information without conceiving of their own. Their momentum would be built on the academics rather than the experience. Does that make sense? And so Shakyamuni is identifying that here, and so is Nichiren. That just because there are scholars around all proclaiming that they're the ones, a reminder, follow the law, not the person. Right? If you follow the goal, the aim of Buddhism, then you cannot be flawed, because Buddhahood, as I say all the time, is something you accomplish in your life. Nobody hands it to you, and it's not in a book. The way to prepare yourself to look for the directions, the map, you may find in a book, but that's not the destination. That's just the tool, just as the mandala is, yeah? Dry mouth, sorry. I'm spending a lot of time on this because I've heard it misquoted, misunderstood, misused so many times. I really want you to understand. So when he says, in the Nirvana Sutra, the Buddha speaks as follows. He's quoting Shakyamuni. After I've passed away, after the former day of the law has ended and the middle day of the law has begun, so this is before our time, right? There will be monks who will give the appearance of abiding by the rules of monastic discipline. They'll be very excellent at being cloistered monks. But they will scarcely ever read, recite, or recite the sutras. They won't continue to expand their insights. Oh, I know that sutra. I've read it 10 times. I don't need to read it anymore. Then you've fallen away from the practice and begun building your ego on top of what you think you know. You've stopped learning, but that's not how they see it, right? So even 3,000 years ago, Shakyamuni is saying, this is what they'll do. I see it in my day. They're going to continue to do so, and I won't be here to correct them. So they will get an audience because they will be more educated. So people will see them as authorities, and their ego will be fed by this, and they'll remain stuck. Let's go on. But they will scarcely ever read or recite the sutras, and instead, they will crave all kinds of food and drink to nourish their bodies, because after all, they've accomplished a lot. Why shouldn't I get more than rice? Give me some of your chicken. Well, humans, yeah. Though they wear the clothes of a monk, they will go about searching for alms like so many huntsmen who, narrowing their eyes, stalk softly. Ooh, there's some people with some wealth. Let's go beg for it. Well, I don't fault them for that, right? That's why some of this, when we read it, can seem confusing. Well, yeah, anybody, you're hungry, right? So you go where you can get food. Why wouldn't you? Let's go on. They will be like a cat on the prowl for mice. What's he really talking about here? He's not faulting them, their behavior. Pay attention. He's criticizing their attitude about what they're doing. What do you hear me say all the time? Buddhism is about attitude and intent. Are you a monk focused on enlightenment, or are you a monk focused on taking advantage of people, manipulating them, just getting yourself fat, just me? Same behavior, but the attitude is wrong. And they will constantly reiterate these words, quote, I have attained arhatship, like I'm entitled now. I know all these sutras. I understand the meaning of life far better than the people around me. So give me a badge, give me a title, give me food. Do you see how that attitude, even if it's not spoken aloud, but obviously some did, or Shakyamuni wouldn't be quoting them. Outwardly, they will seem to be wise and good. Of course, they're quite learned. But within, they will harbor greed and jealousy. Within, they will harbor greed and jealousy. If that isn't about attitude. Do you see what I'm saying now? And when they are asked to preach the teachings, they will say nothing. Well, you want to learn the teachings, become a monk. Come help us brew beer so we can make money. Yes, I may be overstating it, but that's what he's identifying. How could you withhold helping a fellow human being to attain enlightenment, no matter how ignorant their question? What is the attitude and intent that motivates that? That's what he's identifying. How can you call yourself a student of Buddhism and not, when invited by somebody curious, right? We've talked about this. How could you possibly deny them? That's ego. So ask yourself that. You may justify yourself if you're early in your practice, or even later, that when people ask you, what's Buddhism? Because I've had people just plainly ask me like that. And as a Buddhist, we think, oh, crap, that's a huge question, dude. Right? It's intimidating. All of the reasons that we've talked about. You won't understand it. I don't know how to explain it. It's way too big. Blah, 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 blah. What's the answer to that, by the way? Do you remember? You ever heard of Namo Myoho Renge Kyo? Have you ever heard of chanting? Oh, yeah, like those monks, blah, blah, blah. No. Gregorian chants? No. That's not the right words, is it? They don't know anything. What's this thing? But what do you do? You're a Buddhist. What's that about? Have you ever heard Namu Myoho Renge Kyo? Just like a sermon. Thus I have heard. Have you ever heard Namu Myoho Renge Kyo? What? No. What's that? Say it with me. Try it. Namu, Myoho. Right? The first order of business. Daimoku. Period. Can you do that? Who would you deny hearing the seed of Buddhahood? That little creak in the door of Gohonzon door. Take a peek. You want to know about Buddhism, if you're really, I was just curious. That's okay. Just chant Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. My mom, raised Catholic, still Catholic. In many ways, sometimes I want to shake her. She's so damn Catholic. I got her to chant. She's one of these people who easily freaks out, right? So I tell her, first of all, when you feel like that, Mom, take a breath. Just breathe. Just breathe. Yes, you're right, son. Da, 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 da. And then, Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. Just the effort of remembering Namu Myoho Renge Kyo will calm you down. Oh, okay, I will try that. Well, say it with me, Mom. Namu Myoho. Takes a while. She says it. Okay, I will try this. Thank you so much. Then she's very thankful. Next time I talk to her, Mom, take a breath. Did you do what I told you? No, I have to do that more. Sit, just breathe. Get a hold of your breath and then chant, just Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. Well, I'm a Catholic. I don't do the chant. Okay, I'm sorry. I called it chanting. Sorry, my bad. It's a way for you to control your breathing. Oh, yeah. Just Namu Myoho. Yes, it works. I feel it. Yes, it makes me breathe. I feel more relaxed now. You're right. Might take 10 times. Finally, she will do it. And I hear her life changing on the phone. We're a couple thousand miles apart, so. However you can do it, it is the law. Right? Nichiren, 69,384 characters in the Lotus Sutra. Each one is the law. Each one is represented in the Daimoku. When you chant the Daimoku, you are reciting the entire sutra in your intent. It's about attitude and intent, right? Now, I don't know that my mother in her late 80s is going to finally become a practicing Buddhist, although she is and doesn't know it, we could say. But I know that she has chanted. I know that I've helped her open that Gohonzon door. It's up to her, though. I can't give her Buddha. She has to get there. And she has, but she doesn't know it. When she's gotten those aha moments, when she's relaxed herself, when she gets a hold of her mind. It may be brief, but she's felt it, experienced it, tasted it, yeah? And this is what we're talking about here. This is what Shakyamuni is talking about. Even people who are scholarly about this path to enlightenment won't necessarily themselves get it. They'll fall in love with the process. And I've said it in the past, and I know it sounds derisive, but truly, they're playing at Buddhism. I'm excellent at this. Okay. I'm glad you think so. Yeah. All right. Let's continue. See if I can get through a couple of paragraphs here. But do you understand why this is important to understand? Attitude and intent, yeah? Like Brahmins who have taken a vow of silence. It's like they're too good for you. You're not ready. Who are you to judge that? They are not true monks. Wham! They may have spent 20 years of their lives being monks in a monastery. And Shakyamuni says, they're not true monks. They merely have the appearance of monks. Consumed by their erroneous views, they slander the correct teaching. Why do they slander the correct teaching? Because they're not teaching it. They're teaching rules, regulations, how to follow, how to achieve what they have achieved. What is the correct teaching? You know. Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. Just that. Anything else, if you're not leading up to, entering, helping people do that, the law, then you're an obstacle. And if you're an obstacle, what are you doing? You're slandering the correct teaching. You're holding it away. No, you can't have the Daimoku. No, you can't have a mandala. You can't know Gohonzon. No. Jump. Do this, do that. Wow. How arrogant. In the light of the sun and moon that are the Lotus Sutra, preached on Eagle Peak, and the Nirvana Sutra, preached at the Salgrove, or in the bright mirrors that are the commentaries of Miao Lo, of Piling, and Chi Tu of Tung Chun, we can discern without a trace of obscurity the ugly faces of the monks of the various schools of present-day Japan. Especially, Nichiren has to call them out, right? Especially the Zen. I know that may alarm a lot of you or your friends who, anyway. Especially the Zen, the precepts, and Nembutsu schools. A lot of you martial artists might be going, ooh, right? Because what's Nembutsu? Amida Buddha, Amida Buddha. Amitabha, if you will. The Lotus Sutra of the Wonderful Law says in the Encouraging Devotion chapter, after the Buddha has passed into extinction in an age of fear and evil, and the Peaceful Practices chapter says, in the evil age hereafter, in the latter age, and in the latter age hereafter, when the law is about to perish. The Distinctions and Benefits chapter, it's called different things, says, quote, in the evil age of the latter day of the law, in the Medicine King chapter, says, in the last 500-year period, right? All of these different chapters in the Lotus Sutra are identifying our age, yours and mine, and Nichiren's. The Exhortation to Preach chapter of the Lotus Sutra of the Correct Law, the Lotus Sutra of the Correct Law, the Myoho Renge Kyo of the Daimoku, the law, the Myoho Renge Kyo, the Buddha-ness. In the latter age hereafter and in the latter age to come. Right there, all of these chapters and other sutras have been talking about this period in time. The same type of language is found in the supplemented Lotus Sutra of the Wonderful Law. Tendai states, quote, in the middle day of the law, the 3 schools of the south and 7 schools of the north are the enemies of the Lotus Sutra. Same logic I said earlier. They're the enemies of the Lotus Sutra because they lead people astray. They lead people away from the law, the truth, the Myoho Renge Kyo. And Dengyo states, quote, at the end of the middle day of the law, the scholars of the 6 Nara schools in Japan are the enemies of the Lotus Sutra. Same statement. Hundreds of years later, yeah? In the time of Tendai and Dengyo, the 3 types of enemies mentioned above had not yet appeared. But we must recall that when Shakyamuni Buddha, the Lord of Teachings, and Many Treasures Buddha sat side by side in the treasure tower, like the sun and moon, and the Buddhas who were emanations of Shakyamuni had come from all the 10 directions and were arranged beneath the trees like so many stars, then it was said that after the 1,000 years of the former day of the law, and the 1,000 years of the middle day of the law, at the beginning of the latter day of the law, there would be 3 types of enemies of the Lotus Sutra. Ears perk up. That's our time. How could this pronouncement made by the 800,000 million Nayutas of Bodhisattvas have been an empty or false prediction? Right? Because in the Lotus Sutra, as I've talked about before, the enumeration of the audience, which every sutra has, in the Lotus Sutra is absolutely inclusive of every possibility of mind. Not only every possibility of mind, but every possibility of student mind, monk mind, right? From lay people, men and women, to Shravakas, people of learning, Pratyeka Buddhas, people who think they've reached, Hinayana, Ichantika, Bodhisattva, every kind of education, life experience, every human mind, sentient mind, is present at the Lotus ceremony. So this teaching, therefore, is inclusive of every potential mind of sentience. Yeah? It is now some 2,200 years since the thus come one passed away, Nichiren continues. Even if it were possible to point straight at the earth and miss it, if the flowers were to cease blooming in spring, still I am certain that these three powerful enemies exist in the land of Japan. If so, then who is to be numbered among the three enemies? Let's identify them, right? And who is to be accounted as a votary of the Lotus Sutra? Who is not an enemy of the Lotus Sutra? Who is propagating it, right? It is a troubling question, Nichiren says. Are we, I, Nichiren, and my followers, my disciples, my students, to be numbered among the three enemies? Or are we to be numbered among the votaries of the Lotus Sutra? A troubling question indeed. Well, yeah, he's saying that a little bit tongue-in-cheek because he's saying the example of my life, the example of the persecutions we incur, not just me, Nichiren, but you guys too, having your wives raped, your lands taken, simply because you won't bow down to the Nembutsu or some ruling sect in your area, because you claim to continue your allegiance to Nichiren's doctrine of the Lotus Sutra. You're following that rebel, I'll show you, right? I mean, that took a lot of volition, a lot of courage, right? Would you have that courage? Would I have that courage? I can say, after over 40 years of practice, yeah, I think I would. But then again, I'm old and frail. I've lived a full life. So the idea of having my life taken because I'm firmly convinced, Myoho Rengekyo, that this is the way to enlightenment, to a full life, to expressing my life fully, I would have the courage to say, well, yeah, this is the truth. There is no other. But would my 30-year-old self would do that? Even if I knew intellectually my desire for other stuff, would it? Okay. And I would just harbor it in the back of my mind. I'd placate them, right? Certainly in the time of samurai, it was lights out if you didn't. That they survived is a testament to the teaching that if all they did was lose their land or whatever, that was testament that they were practicing correctly. Because they could have just chopped their head off. You're going to stop. I demand that you chant Amida Buddha's name and drop this Nichiren fellow. No. I mean, that's simple. Yeah, that's some serious courage, yeah? In the 24th year, I'm going on and on here. In the 24th year of the reign of King Chao, the fourth ruler of the Chao dynasty, with the cyclical sign Kinoe Tora, on the night of the 8th day of the 4th month, a 5-colored light spread across the sky from north to south until all was as bright as noon. The earth shook in 6 different ways, and though no rain fell, the rivers and streams, wells and ponds brimmed with water. All the trees and plants bloomed and bore fruit. It was a wondrous happening indeed. King Chao was greatly surprised. The grand historian Su Yu performed divinations and announced, quote, "A sage has been born in the western region." "And what about our country?" asked King Chao, to which Su Yu replied, "Nothing particular has happened for now, but 1,000 years from now, the words of this sage will be brought to this country and will bring benefit to all beings," end quote. Su Yu was a scholar of non-Buddhist texts who had not in the slightest degree freed himself from the illusions of thought and desire, and yet he was able to know what would happen 1,000 years in the future. And just as he predicted, 1,015 years after the Buddha's passing, in the reign of Emperor Ming, the second ruler of the later Han Dynasty, in the 10th year of the Yuping era, Common Era 67, with the cyclical sign Hinotoyu, the doctrines of Buddhism were introduced to China. So he's picking some history from China, not Japan, his own country, but thousands of years before in China, talking about this story of Buddhism, which this scholar knew nothing about, would arrive in China. How much of that is backwritten as folklore? We don't know. But the story has been around a long time, and Nichiren's quoting it. Again, making sure everyone understands, hey, it ain't me saying it. This historically, this has been known by many great scholars and cultures and folklore, and we have it. We have it right here in its form. Namo Myo Renge Kyo, captured in these texts. Right? This is Nichiren's whole story. On a quite different level is the prediction I have described above that was made by the various bodhisattvas in the presence of Shakyamuni Buddha, many treasures Buddha, and the Buddhas from the 10 directions that were emanations of Shakyamuni Buddha. In view of this prediction, how could the 3 types of enemies of the Lotus Sutra help but be present in Japan today? All right. That's it for today. We will continue with Nichiren's encyclopedic knowledge of history and the teachings of Buddhism. Making a point, remember all of this under the guise of the title, Opening of the Eye, which I subtitled for us as What is Gohonzon? Because that's what all of this is about. It is that shift from the craving, holding on to, obsession of appearance rather than being. Because in a very real way, if you think about it, appearance is based on everything that was a moment ago. It no longer is. Isn't it more interesting to be where the fabrication is happening? Moment to moment instantiating, I'm being this, I'm being this. I want to be this, and I want to influence myself to be more, to experience more, to understand more, to see with clarity this process happening, churning, now. Why do I want to be my past? Here's a picture of me. No, it's a picture. It's a photograph. It captured a moment. It's not me. I am not even this. I am a happening of karma, moment to moment to moment. Wow, everything is doing that. Wow, what a different perspective. Nobody owns anything. They just act like they do. Relax. Right? That's not you. Oh, yes, it is. At moments when you're chanting, in fact, anytime you chant for any length of time, but the more the better, you'll be in this. You may not know how to discuss it, but you will know it. And in many ways, I know for myself, that knowing, that timeless experience, that momentum, which is what you experience when you fuse with your Gohonzon mind. It's like time disappears, you're just happening. It's when you stop. For me, many times, it's when I've stopped chanting. Like I've had to tell myself, okay, you're going to stop. You're going to stop. How do I stop? And okay, now should I stop now? Oh, I'm thinking about it too much. Okay, just stop. And then, oftentimes, I'll just giggle or laugh out loud because that sensation, it's almost oral. It's almost like here again. That makes me laugh now. Everything appears differently. I'm reassessing my samsaric state. And I think those moments are when I'm most aware of how deeply I've gone into Myoho Renge-kyo, into Buddha. And after that, I so want to carry that with me in my mind throughout the day. But you can feel it ebbing away. And I envy when I read Nichiren say, I've reached a point where I live Namu Myoho Renge-kyo every moment of the day. I think, yes, that's the ultimate bodhisattva life, yes? To have that state of awareness throughout the day. I've only managed to achieve it for mere moments, right? There are days when I've had few distractions and I've been able to hang on to it quite a while. I want to sit like you've seen. I've had videos where you've seen the property that I'm on here. It's not that big, but it's big enough that I have all this breathing room that I can breathe the trees in, right? And the little pond and so forth. What an amazing life, yeah? And that's what you end up experiencing, how amazing life is. Well, that is Buddhahood. It's hard for me, anyway, to establish and sense that in the midst of city life. I'm not saying it's not possible. I'm just saying for me, my karma, heck, my name is Sylvain. Sylvain is of the woods. Right? Karmically, not that labels signify who you are, but we tend to label things based on our interaction, our sense of them, right? It's just a curious thing. Anyway, I hope sincerely that something in these discussions is either giving you specific insights, food for thought, or just some kind of an inspiration or something to send you to your mandala, to your Butsudan, to encourage your practice, right? Main theme here: mind, attitude, and intent. And from a standpoint of practice, encouragement, confidence, right? So use this resource. Use the search on the middle of the home page for this channel, not the top one, that's YouTube, just the one on the home page, yeah? Look up terms that you're curious about. You'll get result sets, so you don't have to scan 1,000. And looking at the titles of many of these things, it's like the Go Show. You have no clue what letter the Jijobo means, right? What's in there? Anything of value? It's taking too long. That's why this channel. That's why threefoldlotus.com, the website. Lots of very quickly downloadable information there to help you in your studies, in your confidence, yeah? The ebooks, I haven't heard from anyone as to whether or not you think I should roll those into the Lulu site proper where all the print books are. I've been trying to keep them separate so it's clearer, but maybe that's a fool's errand. So let me know your thoughts on that. In the meantime, keep your practice strong. Watch that health of yourself and your friends. Stay safe, and I will see you in the next one. Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. All right. Bye for now.